Alright, everyone. This is the first week of the Bidding War League. So, my opponent for this week is WreckItMike. And with the Bidding War League, I've got 10 Pokemon I can use against his 9 Pokemon. The Pokemon I have to use are Pheromosa, Aerodactyl, Indeedee, Tornadus T, Regieleki, Tyranitar, Heatran, Aegislash, Tangela, and Grimmsnarl. WreckItMike, on the other hand, has the Kanto Slowbro, Genesect, Tapu Koko, Landorus Incarnate, Melmetal, Kommo-o, Tangrowth, Hawlucha, and Arcanine. So, one of the things here I gotta decide is what Pokemon are going to be the most useful to me in this fight. I decided that Tyranitar probably wasn't going to work too well here, just because there was a lot of ground and steel types who don't care about the sand being up. Then he also had quite a few Pokemon that would hit Tyranitar very hard, so I definitely did not include him. I also decided that Indeedee was probably not a great choice either. I didn't think it would be capable of tanking anything from his team that it needed to. And the offensive version probably wasn't going to make much of a dent on his team either. So then go with either of those two. That left us with 8 more Pokemon to try and hash out. I didn't bring Tangela. That's mostly because there's a lot of special coverage on the team. Not to mention that Tangela gets absolutely walled by his Tangrowth if he brings it. So we kept Tangela out on that one. And the last one that I chose not to bring was Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl being kind of in the same boat of it not being able to do much for me against this team. Especially with bulky behemoths like Slowbro, Kanto, and Melmetal being able to probably tank whatever he sends at him. And then things like Genesect and Tapu Koko who could probably one-hit KO it. So that means the 6 that I brought against WreckItMike would be Pheromosa, Tornadus T, Regieleki, Heatran, Aegislash, and Grimmsnarl. So we'll go ahead and get onto the battle and figure out what he brought against me. It looks like he brought Slowbro, Tapu Koko, Landorus Incarnate, Melmetal, Kommo-o, and Arcanine. So let's figure out what's going on here. Going with Tapu Koko first. I sent out Grimmsnarl first, mostly so I could get screens up right off the bat. Mostly because when I looked at his team, I wasn't seeing anything that would get rid of screens aside from defog from the Landorus. But I don't feel like he would risk Landorus right off the bat just for that. So, while Koko's out here, I'm expecting Dazzling Gleam. So, Light Screen up first, as always against a special attacker. But he decides he wanted to swap out. So as he swapped out to, I believe it was Melmetal. Yep, Melmetal it is. So obviously with Melmetal being a physical attacker, kind of going through my head if I want to try to set up Reflect right now, or if I want to swap into something that can tank his attacks better. And I decided that it was worth the risk losing Grimmsnarl to a double Iron Bash, just to get Reflect up now. Which didn't happen, unfortunately. So, figured out now that he has Brick Break, so that kind of rendered Grimmsnarl almost worthless while Melmetal was still up. So, not much use there. So screens weren't going to work, but if he was expecting me to try and set it up again, and he would just go for Brick Break, I was hoping I would be running into Brick Break without Aegis taking any damage from that. Unfortunately, it looks like he planned for that and just went straight for the Earthquake. The one good thing about fighting a Elemental is that you know it's going to be slower than your Pokemon most of the time. If I remember correctly, it's like base 40 speed. And Aegis is much faster than I always think it is, at base 60. So that means Aegis should have free reign to attack for one turn. Or he decides to swap it out. And goes straight into an Arcanine. The one good thing about this Aegis is that he doesn't have anything to resist Ghost-type attacks on his team. So I'm able to get off Ghost-type coverage moves pretty easily. So I can just spam Shadow Ball all day long if I'm expecting a switch and not really care too much. However, Arcanine's a lot faster than I am. But I also don't have much in the way that would like to take a Flare Blitz to the face. Plus, I wasn't sure if there was going to be a Flare Blitz coming in. So I thought it might be alright to sacrifice Aegis even this early on, just to try and figure out what else he's got. Or I also thought that this might be a possibility as well. So on the off chance that I was right on that portion of it, which I was, spamming Shadow Ball is going to keep him going. He was either going to have to be forced to try and take out Aegis without healing that turn, or he was going to have to switch again. Switching, however, is very detrimental to him right now, because Shadow Ball coverage is basically really good against his team. So figuring he was probably just going to go straight for the KO, which means Flare Blitz is coming. So Heatran gets to eat that. And now kind of gets free reign because it could have close combat, but I was betting against it thanks to it having Morning Sun. And yep, swap out the Arcanine. And I was taunting it in case he didn't feel like swapping out, just so he wouldn't heal himself. Slowbro has many different variants, so I didn't know what I was fighting with offhand, so taunt wasn't exactly the worst thing to happen to that Slowbro, just in case it had slack off as well. And thankfully, this seemed to be a relatively weak Slowbro. So that Scald didn't matter nearly as much as it could have. So I kind of get more free reign on this turn at the sacrifice of Heatran's bulkiness. But without a Tangrowth to deal with, me having Heatran around just didn't seem like it was necessary as much. So I felt I was safe playing a bit more risky with Heatran right now and letting it take more hits than otherwise I would like to. So with Heatran versus Landorus, normally I wouldn't keep him in just because there's an Earth Power or an Earthquake coming my way. But I did just put up Stealth Rocks, and he immediately switched this thing in, so that led me to believe Defog was coming. So, taking the chance on that and being powered up from Flash Fire, I thought a Lava Plume might deal some good damage, if not outright KO it. Sadly, it was not a KO, so I had to kind of deal with this thing as it was. And time for the swap out there. Going straight back to the Arcanine. which would lead me to believe that it has fighting type coverage, probably, or something to hit the Heatran with. And with Arcanine being as low health as it was already, and Landorus T not doing much for me, just because Coco still exists on the team, probably safer to just go straight for damage on the Arcanine. Which it looked like he kind of thought was the same thing for him as well, I think. Which is why he risked doing Flare Blitz despite probably taking major damage from that. Was really wishing that Hurricane KO'd the thing so that I still had Tornadoes to move around with. It does have Regenerator for its ability, but as I play more with Tornadoes, I figure out that Regenerator just doesn't help it nearly as much because I don't typically play it bulky. And it's not bulky enough to live an electric attack from this guy anyways. So in hindsight, I think it probably would have been better to just let Tornadoes T faint to that one, so I'd know what was coming out, and could plan accordingly for it. And there comes his Exodia again. That Landorus is a pain. Partially because it just invalidates my Regieleki as long as it exists on that team. Because Regieleki does not have any good coverage moves. It's got two types for coverage, normal and rock. Neither of which was of great help. And the rock coverage is weak, and the normal coverage is physical based. And most Regieleki would prefer to have special based movesets. So I decided sack the Heatran just because with that Lander still out, was also pretty invalidated. And I also had Pheromosa who was able to clean up afterwards. I just needed a good opportunity to get in safely so that it would start out speeding everything. So in comes Tornadoes again, just to be our kind of blanket check. And the Landorus was far too weak to take any attack from Tornadoes. So I was expecting the switch there. Now then, we played this mind game with him earlier, but I kind of figured out at this point that he's just gonna Volt Switch every time anyways. So again, we're sacrificing Tornadoes to get a free turn in. For whoever I decide to send in. Which wasn't much. I only have 2 full health Pokemon left at this point. And one is Pheromosa, who is extremely frail. And the other is Regieleki, which is not much better in terms of bulk. So now at this point, I kind of have to start trying to sweep him, because that's about the only thing I have left to do. So thankfully, with Pheromosa's Focus Sash, I'm able to set up in one turn, because Landorus does not have any multi-hit moves. And there was the off chance that I was thinking it might be Choice Scarfed, because he was swapping this thing around a lot. A lot more than I would think it should be doing. And thanks to it going first before Pheromosa, that I knew it was locked in. I knew it was Choice Scarfed at that point. So it was locked in, which means we have to deal with Rock Slide. And I wasn't quite sure which Pheromosa this was that I had, if its speed was going to go up or its special attack. So, making sure on that I knew what I was doing with it. Because I was kind of debating between doing another Quiver Dance since he missed this turn, or just outright KOing it. I decided that going for the KO would be better. Letting this thing live any longer was far more detrimental to my team. So now that his ground type is out, Regieleki can actually come in and do something. And not worried about just being invalidated by the mere presence of that thing. Because I believe the only resist he has at this point... No, he has 2 resist still. We haven't seen his Como-O yet. Which Tornadus would have been nice to have for that thing, but I had other... But I also still have Grimmsnarl, who is near half health, which would be enough for him. And then there's both Pheromosa and Regieleki who outspeed it. And only resisting Regieleki is not the same as being able to check it, as I've come to figure out with my various plays with the Regieleki. Alright, so here comes the first Dynamax of this battle, and that goes straight to the Melmetal. And it's a regular Dynamax, not Gigantamax, which means that his Steel-type moves will increase his defenses. And that miss was just something terrible. I was not happy with that miss in the slightest. But Sash was still working, at least for that turn. So, with that, we go for Focus Miss again. This time we hit, and we also hit his Berry. So if that miss had not happened, and Pheromosa had actually hit both Focus Blasts, that would have been a KO'd Melmetal that turn. But that's alright. I still had Regieleki to go out and do something against this thing, and I also had Aegislash to waste a turn of this, which I thought was far more important, was to just get this thing off of its Dynamax and deal some damage along the way. Because if it was increasing its special defense, that means it was just making things harder for Regieleki later on. So the more damage we deal to it now, the better off we were, and the more turns we waste on that Dynamax. I was also partially hoping that Life Orb would KO the Aegislash itself. That way, no more stat boost for it, because it had no target. But that wasn't the case. It was a vain hope, I know. But yeah, take what you can get sometimes. And sometimes having Pokemon go down a turn earlier than you wanted is better for you. But now that his Dynamax is over, we're dealing with a normal health Melmetal. Even with +2 special defense, Melmetal has no special defense. So, at this point, Regieleki should be able to destroy the last of its health. And thanks to its ability Transistor, all electric moves gain a boost in power as well. So even though it's only base 100 special attack, that's still going to hurt a lot. Not to mention we're Dynamaxing this turn as well. So now you suddenly have a base 140 electric move coming off Regieleki. That's going to hurt a lot. Because that's 210 in power, plus Transistor, which I don't know how much it goes up by, actually. But even with the +2 in special defense, there was no way Melmetal was living that. Alright, so there went the Melmetal. which means Brick Break was no longer a thing, so Grimmsnarl had the chance to set up screens. But with Reglecki Dynamaxed like this, it's worth more to me to keep Reglecki out on the field to deal as much damage as possible. Because WreckItMike only has 3 Pokemon left. One of them is the Slowbro, who would kind of just waste turns for the Grimmsnarl anyways. So KOing this thing would be very good for me, even if it is just an easy KO right now. The one thing that I was surprised about that we never got to see was Slowbro using Teleport. Because that's one of the main reasons to use Slowbro right now, is that it's got Teleport for its ability, plus Regenerator. But I never really gave him a chance to do that. I think the only chance he had for that was against the Heatran. And in this case, just teleporting it out of this wasn't very useful. Even if it was, he would have to have lived that next attack, which he didn't. So now we got Tapu Koko on the field. It's an electric resist, but we do have Terrain Up, and we're still Dynamaxed. And Koko isn't exactly known for its defenses. It's better than Pheromosa or Reglecki, but I don't think it's much better. Alright, so now we're left with 1 Pokemon left. And that is his Kommo-o. So this thing's part of a problem, because I know this thing can set up with relative ease against my Pokemon. So swapping out wasn't really a good option for me, in my opinion. So I went straight for the damage, just to see if I could get more. And I had forgotten what Klangamera's Soul actually did. So the fact that it failed surprised me, which means Reglecki was still on the field and still able to KO this thing. I looked it up later. Klangamera's Soul cuts its HP in half, so it didn't have half its HP left to do so, but it boosts all of its stats. That would have been game over for me right then and there. And with that, we have won our first victory in the Bidding War League. So that's a 2-0 victory. That gives me a little bit of a difference, which helps figure out who goes on to the final tournament phase of this league. So would have been better had I gotten more of it, but mostly I'll be happy to win these matches more than I will about the difference. Because wins are recorded first for figuring out the tournament phase participants. So if I win all my matches, I'm in anyways. If I start losing matches, then that difference is going to start to matter. But we also learned an important lesson here today. Reglecki is a wonderful late game cleaner. So that may come into future use in my upcoming weeks for the Bidding War League. So with that, I bid you all farewell and look forward to my next battle.